You're listening to the Word Slinger Podcast, episode 37, Reading Body Language with Alicia Cuello.
If you would like to support this program, or any of Kevin Tomlinson's work, then we invite you to become a reader. Find fiction you will love at kevintomlinson.com/books.
It's the Word Slinger Podcast, where story matters. Build your brand, write your book, redefine who you are. It's all about the story here. What's yours? Now, here's the guy who invented pants optional, Kevin Tomlinson, the Word Slinger.
Word Slinger.
Hey everybody, this is Kevin Tomlinson, the Word Slinger. But you knew that already. You've been tuning in through the entire intro, right? So, I don't know. I do that every time. So, this week I'm talking to somebody. This was a really interesting interview. Not that they're not all interesting, but this one, for some reason, this particular topic gets me kind of excited. Just because of, I don't know, it's just the unique idea of it. Now, I don't know if anyone else ever watched this, but there was a show a couple of years ago called Lie to Me, and the premise of the show was that this very house-like character was an expert in reading body language, and he had like a whole think tank built around this idea. And so he and his team would basically solve little puzzles based on body language. So it was a pretty cool idea. I liked it. I was probably one of the few people who actually watched the show. That's why it's probably not still around. But now, though, it piqued an interest, and I started looking into this, and I've read books about body language, and I've watched lots of video and listened to podcasts, and it's an interesting topic, and there's a lot to it. So I'm really glad to have a guest on the show who is an expert in body language. Alicia Cuello, which, I butcher her name, of course, at the beginning of the show. And I think I've butchered it again here, because it's Alicia, not Alicia. I don't know why I insist on pronouncing every letter I read. But Alicia Cuello she's a speaker and a leading authority on body language, and I'll let her tell her story. So, without keeping it any longer, let's jump right in to Alicia Cuello and body language. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in, and I'm here with Alicia Cuello. Oh man, I messed it up. Cuello.
Like a yo-yo.
You know what? I'm determined to say those L's.
Okay.
But Alicia Cuello, and she's a speaker and leading authority on body language. Too bad she's not an authority on spoken language. She could probably fix my tendency to get everyone's name wrong right off the bat. So you are... Let's. I don't want to back up or anything, because I like showing everybody the warts and all on this show. But you're a leading authority on body language. I mean, how does that start? How does that business start?
Correct. Well, I just kind of fell into it. We all do it on some level, but there are some professions that force you to get really good at it, and one of them is human resources, which is what my background is.
Okay.
Other ones are like police officers or firefighters. You really have to pay attention to what's going on, and so from an HR standpoint, I specialized in investigations, and so I had to rely on what was being said, what was happening, and really figure out what was going on. So I've been doing it for over 20 years. I've just really fine-tuned my skills in the last probably 10 years.
So what leads to that though? Like how do you get into that? What courses do you take, or what programs do you go through?
There are a number of things out there, and I would definitely say if you want to take some classes on this, look into Dr. Paul Ekman. He's considered the godfather of body language. And one of the things that he teaches is how to pick up on deception. But more importantly, he's got a little course where you can pick up on micro expressions. And those are looks on the face that happen so quickly most people don't recognize what's happening, but it tips off your subconscious. Well, he's got this program where these universal emotions flash on the screen, and you get so good at it, you can identify them immediately. So, for example, there's like happiness and sad and disgust. And then from there, you just start building on it. And one of the foundations in body language is recognize what's happening and then go with your gut and start asking questions. So it's just a step-by-step process. But I would strongly encourage people to look at Dr. Paul Ekman. Let's see, Janine Driver's another good one. Vanessa Van Edwards. There are classes out there on body language, and they will help you get started, kind of entry level, if you will. And then there are people like myself who work with folks who've already got a pretty good understanding of body language, and I just help you fine tune it.
Now, you work primarily with people who are using this for sales, right?
I do. I yes and no. I do. The sales group really loves what I'm teaching because, they've got to be quick and understand what's happening in the conversation.
Yeah.
But I've got HR professionals now asking me to come speak with them. I have the Denver Art Museum. It's got me going out there in 2 weeks to teach people about deception. So it's interesting in that I started with sales and I started with management because, they want to know how to talk to people and influence people. And now these other groups are coming back around saying, we'd love to visit with you because we need to understand what's happening.
Very cool. There's something kind of fascinating about this. I've read a few books on this subject, and I wish I could remember. I'll probably look them up while we're talking at some point. But there are a lot of applications to this, right? I mean, what can you do? What are some things that you can do if you're really good at reading body language?
You know what? I have been asked to sit in on negotiating on contracts so that you can look and see where a paragraph in a contract is upsetting somebody.
Yeah.
And then I can kind of tip you off and say, hey, Kevin, they're not happy with that. You might want to ask them why. So contract negotiations in investigations, I do that a lot. But also when you're interacting like with your teenagers or with your spouse, you can use this anywhere. I'm asked to come in to watch people, to listen to them, to get to the truth, but also to help you recognize where something's making someone uncomfortable and you need to ask more questions. Did I answer that question right, Kevin?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
I mean, because that seems like a good use, the negotiation side of that. It kind of seems like an unfair advantage, right? I mean,
Well, you know what, Kevin, we're all doing it, but here's what's happened over time. We've become so electronically motivated, with like Skype. You and I are on the phone and things like that. We don't necessarily pay attention or listen to people anymore the way we used to. And body language is actually how we survived, all those years ago. And we've kind of dismissed it. And so if people will just start looking and listening to what's really being said, you'll be able to start picking up on body language much quicker. And by the way, you are picking up on it. What we find is that most people dismiss it because they don't trust what they're seeing and hearing.
So why do you think that is? Why do they not trust it?
It's a number of things. Number one, it could be very painful, especially if it's in your personal life and you're picking up on possibly some deceit going on personally. You don't want to face that. Or maybe you feel threatened by it, maybe in your job. Yeah. Maybe you're picking up that your manager is glaring at you or something like that, and you don't want to believe that your manager doesn't like you.
Yeah.
So there are a number of things, but it really goes back to we're protecting ourselves.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it's just too painful.
I've had lots of experiences where I just knew something was going on, knew someone was going to say something, and I didn't quite ignore it. I just sort of made internal decisions about it, I guess. But I mean, the most recent was a couple of years ago or a year or so ago. I was a creative director. I knew the new VP of marketing was going to be cutting the parts of the department. I knew I was going to be in that bunch. No indication. And in fact, quite the opposite. We were all told we were all fine. But I had that vibe, and I kind of refer to it as my spidey sense. Like I get that a lot. So that's interesting. And so is that a big component? Like, I considered that intuition. I mean, is that essentially the same thing?
It is. It's the same thing. And I'm with you. So when my spidey tingles are going off, something's up. And again, sometimes there are so many messages coming at us that there's no way all of us can pick up on the body language cues. Yeah. But what you want to remember about the body language cues is they are ruled by the subconscious, and so they really tell you how someone feels about the situation. So you were probably picking up on some body language vibes off your boss.
Yeah.
Somebody was giving you vibes, and you were picking up on it. So one of the things that I did when I was in HR, I studied law enforcement interviewing techniques. And one of the things they talked about was go with your gut, because it's your subconscious telling you something's off, be careful, you might be in danger. So one of the things I teach people is always go with your gut. Don't jump to conclusions. Go with your gut and ask questions. So Kevin, if you'd come to me, I would have said, you know what, I would probably go ask. They're not going to tell you, but I would probably go ask, hey,
Right.
I'm getting this weird signal.
Right.
Always go with your spidey tingles.
So
Yeah.
when should you be more careful about that? Like, are there times when you're just fooling yourself?
With your spidey tingles?
Yeah, I mean, because I think everybody has that moment where they think something's wrong and it turns out to be nothing. I mean, how do you distinguish between the two?
You have to ask questions.
Yeah.
And that's the other piece that I am big on making sure everyone understands, which is I can show you what to look for and what to listen for.
Yeah.
But instead of jumping to conclusions, you've got to ask questions, because you don't know the motive behind the other person, what's going on with them. So for example, if I'm talking to you, Kevin, and maybe you're rolling your eyes, you might be rolling at your eyes at somebody behind me. So rather than me say, oh, Kevin's rolling his eyes at me, he doesn't like me, I need to say, hey, Kevin, have I done something?
Yeah. Yeah, verify. Okay, so you may have noticed a slight dramatic pause there, audience, and now we're on a different medium. We switched to phone, so the audio quality may change slightly, but basically we had a dropout. We're having some weather issues in Colorado and in Houston, so nature works against you sometimes. So, but Alicia's still here. Hi. How are you?
Hi. Good.
So, and I don't remember exactly where we dropped off and all the confusion. I lost it. But I think we were talking about sort of the gut reactions and what, when you can, you talked about asking questions to sort of differentiate between, your actual intuition and just sort of a mistake you may be making. So what are some other ways that we can kind of use this? I mean, let's jump into what are some ways we can kind of perfect this, or at least hone this as a skill?
Okay. So a couple of things is hone it as a skill. I would say probably the easiest thing to do is just start active listening if you're not doing it already, and really listen to what's being said. And the reason I say that is because when we're being upfront with somebody, we answer the question right away. So if you were to say, hey, Alicia, do you live in Houston? I would say no. Well, if I kind of played around and didn't really answer the question until later on, that would give you a red flag, something's up. So I actually encourage everybody, the watching, for the signals, like when someone starts moving around or fidgeting, those are easy to pick up on. But as we get older, our eyesight's not as sharp, and so we start to miss things. But if you'll start listening to the voice and really what is being said and hold them accountable for what they said, you're going to do very well with body language. So one of the things you should do is if somebody says, so let's say somebody gets up on the stage and they say, they're asked, did you murder that person? And they say, yes, no. You've got to go back to the yes, because the yes is driven by body language and the subconscious. It stressed them out. So they answered the question to get the stress to go away, but then they quickly covered it up and said, no, I didn't. So in that case, you would come back and you would say, hey, you said yes, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people misstep. Again, it goes back to they don't want to believe what they don't want to believe, because sometimes it can be too painful, and they don't trust their gut. So just remember, your body language is there as it's your protection mechanism. It's your own security force.
Yeah.
And so when it's going off, listen to it. So just start listening to what people say and take them at face value.
Yeah. It's, now, do people, is it legitimate to say that people sometimes say things without really thinking, or, their reaction isn't necessarily a lie, it's just a reflex? Does that happen, or is that really just...
Yeah, Again, remember about the motivators. You don't know what's motivating them. So sometimes things just come out. And yeah, we're human. You know, sometimes I'll slip up and I'll say something that it just came out. But those are, they're kind of rare. So just know that. Just remember, people tell you the truth up front. And I don't want to harp on deception, because again, body language is about how someone feels about a situation. So they're really telling you how they feel. And again, we all lie. That's what happens. And you know, you gotta understand that there's something motivating them to say that, and it might not be about deception. They might truly be distracted. Remember the eye roll?
Yeah.
So you might call me Caroline because you're looking at my sister behind you, and you get to say Alicia. So again, you got to put it into context and figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
So it's not always a lie.
You end up pronouncing the L's in your name when you're not supposed to.
Exactly. Well, that's a cultural thing. The name's Spanish, so I understand people trip it up. And that's not, I don't take that personally.
Oh, good. Because I'm probably going to do it again.
Okay, good.
Well, okay. But you said you didn't want to harp on deception, but to me that seems like I guess maybe it's the most fun thing to to focus
absolutely.
on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
they're
what are, I mean, I don't want to give the impression that that's the only way to use this, but it is something interesting. And I think for most people, especially in a negotiation and from a marketing perspective, I mean, I think it would be useful for people to filter out the sort of scammy kind of marketing versus something that's actually going to be beneficial to them. And the marketers themselves might be able to utilize these things to come across as more authentic, right?
Oh, absolutely. So when I go out and I work with salespeople, and it could be marketers, it could be HR professionals, whoever, what I tell them is when you're interacting with somebody, you've got to come from a place of be sincere and be honest, because you and I are both feeding off each other's body language cues. So if you're giving me some creepy vibes, I'm going to be reacting to your creepy vibes. So you got to come from a place of just, sincere, hey, I want to help you and all that good stuff. On the flip side, I kind of got lost in my head, Kevin. So
your body language is telling me that you're lost in your head.
Yeah, I'm lost in my head. I'm like, wait a minute, we got off. Okay, so for them, when you start to see, changes in their behavior, which is one of the things that you're looking for, if you're talking to them maybe about the price of a widget, let's say a widget, and they start to kind of move around, or they're saying, oh, yeah, Kevin, let's talk about this later on. Here's what I would encourage you to take into consideration. Is it possible that they don't want to admit to you that their company's not doing well and they can't afford it? Or maybe they are genuinely interested, but maybe they're not the decision maker, and that's a blow to their ego, and so that's why they're acting strange. So again, it's not necessarily about deceit. It's about recognizing when somebody is uncomfortable around a situation and figuring out what's happening. So it's actually very beneficial. I talk to people when I work with real estate agents. I always tell them, when you and your mortgage broker or your mortgage person are going through with them and talking to them about finances, instead of having your head buried down and taking notes, you need to be watching them, because finances it's a difficult subject for a lot of people, and it's hard to admit when you might be struggling financially. So they're not necessarily being deceitful with you to be deceitful. They're doing it because they're embarrassed. Right. But it's a good sign that if you're trying to sell them a $200,000 home and they're wiggling in their seat and they're not giving you eye contact, maybe you should look at a $150,000 home.
Right.
Yeah. So that's how you can use it. You can tell when people are uncomfortable around a situation, and you just need to ask more questions. Sometimes they're going to tell you, I don't have the money. Sometimes they're not, and that's when your gut needs to step in and just understand it all works together. Does that help?
Yes, no, absolutely. Okay. And so I'm wondering now, though, is this the sort of thing that you can consciously control? So if I wanted to, I don't want to deceive people with this, but what I do want to do is get a message across, and I'm a communicator. That's what I do, right? So, I want to get a message across in the most powerful way possible. So is it possible for me to use some technique from, shape my own body language, as it were, to make sure my point gets across and is emphasized the way I want it to be, and that, are there tricks I can use?
Yes, they've actually done multiple studies on this. And what body language experts say is fake it till you become it. And so with body language, when you make the decision, okay, I want to come across as more confident. So one of the things you would do is you would stand up straight with your shoulders back, keep your head neutral and your eyes, straight ahead. And for people when they're first getting started with that, it can be difficult for them. So the first step is acknowledging this is what I want to do. The second step is how do I want to come across? And then you figure out what do you need to do from a body language standpoint to come across that way. And then you just start taking baby steps. Maybe today you stand with your shoulders straight back, and maybe tomorrow you forget, but you just keep reminding yourself. And then over time, it becomes natural, and then it takes off. Yeah. So, you fake it until you become it, because the subconscious kicks in and says, oh, Kevin's standing up straight, he's got his shoulders back, he feels good about himself.
Yes.
And so they've done study after study that say when you start tweaking your body language, amazing thing happens.
Yeah, there's a a TED Talk from Amy Cuddy that is, I think, that exact title, right?
Yeah, it's power posing. Yeah. And I quote her a lot. She's pretty amazing. She's out at Harvard. Yeah.
Yeah, I invited her to be on the show. She hasn't responded yet. So
good luck. She's cool. Oh my gosh, she's cool.
She is cool. Yeah. So okay, all right. I like that idea, because what it means to me, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, but what it means to me is not only am I able to communicate with another person, I'm also able to communicate with myself and change my own perspective. Right?
Yes. Absolutely.
I find that very encouraging.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, I've gotten to the point now where I can just look at somebody, and based on their body language, I can tell you how they're feeling about themselves.
Yeah.
And it's dead on. And so one of the first things I'll tell people is get big. Confident people get big. And when you're talking about your message, make sure you're big. Even if you're sitting down, your shoulders need to be back. You need to be sitting up straight, because that comes out in your voice. And then you just start working it that way. So like right now I'm sitting down, but I'm sitting straight up.
Right.
Because if I slouch, you'll hear it in my voice.
Right. That's interesting. And I wonder how we do that. How do we do that?
Do what?
How do we know that you're slouching, or that you're sitting straight up, or that you're smiling? What are the cues that we're picking up from people's voices?
A lot you are picking up. So the voice is actually over half of body language. And they've done studies where people just listen to the voice and they tell you the emotion behind the voice, and they're dead on. There is a book called Blink by Malcolm Gladwell, I believe. Okay, have you read that book?
Oh, yeah, I love that book.
Yeah, amazing book. So he talks about the power of just a split second, and if you'll go with your gut, you will recognize what's happening. Well, I've done that with the voice, and they've been able to identify that people can pick up on, I want to say it's 17 different types of smiles just in your voice without seeing you.
Wow.
Yeah. So let's think about this. When you call into customer service, let's say you're having a problem with your cable network, and you've got someone, they go, "Thank you for calling XYZ. How can I help you?" Do you really think they're sitting up straight? Probably not.
You can tell right away if you're gonna be enraged at the end of this call.
Exactly. The tone of the voice tells you everything.
Yeah. That's interesting. Now, but can you effectively? I keep coming back to this. I don't want to fool people, but I do want. There are times when you have to push through what you're actually feeling, especially if what you're doing is supposed to benefit the other person. So, in my own practice and in my own coaching, when I talk to people, I may not be very enthusiastic about their project or about, about the thing that they're running to write about or, their industry even, but I have to be engaged and interested. So I kind of put on airs. I mean, I don't completely fake it. I try to find something interesting. So, but is there a way to, to do that? How do we do that? How do we, I don't want to fool them, but I do want to fool them. So.
Right. So here's a trick.
Okay.
You've got to find something. You have to be sincere. You have to sincerely find something about them and their project that you can admire. And it might be something as simple as you like the pen they're writing with that day. Mm-hmm. But what you do is when you start relating to the person as a person and not a project, and you find something you genuinely like about them, it's easier for you to have enthusiasm for their project because you want them, the human being, to succeed.
Yeah.
So if you don't like the project and you don't like the person, you're going to have a hard time getting through that project. And I'm willing to bet you money they will be able to tell he doesn't want to work with us.
Right.
I can just tell.
Yeah.
So it's just about connecting more on a human level when you can't connect on the professional level. And Kevin, I'm here to tell you, some of the investigations I've done have been just ugly, 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 and I did not like the person I had to talk to. Yeah. But if I would look at them long enough and figure out, okay, from a human aspect, is there something I can identify with? Can I understand where they're coming from? And as soon as I could get into their mindset, and by the way, Kevin, here's a trick. When you're sitting across from somebody and you're just not digging the project, if you assume their body language, you will get insight into how their head works.
Right.
And it actually might help you connect. And so when I'm talking to people and I really don't like them, one of the things is I will start mirroring them and I will start to look at them as a human being, not what they did, but as a human being. And it softens my voice and it softens my approach with them. And whether I agree with them or not, I can still work with them. Because sometimes I still have to work with the bad guy, even though they shouldn't be there. I get to work with them.
Yeah, yeah. And that mirroring, I mean, you don't want to go overboard. And
Right.
You see this on TV all the time when they, somebody learns about mirroring, and so they exactly duplicate everything the other person does.
Yeah.
So you want to avoid that, but I like that approach because it's something you can do. It can be very subtle, but I mean, it's something you can do immediately. Now, that's if you're talking to them in person. A lot of my conversations happen remotely, like this one, right?
Okay.
So, since voice is 50% of body language, is that what you said? Over
50%.
So, are there techniques I can use, from the power of voice alone to...
I'm glad you asked me that, Kevin. So, a couple of things, and this is one of the things that I work with when I give presentations. Here's one of my tips. How quickly you speak is a direct correlation to how quickly you process information. Mm-hmm. So one of the ways to show respect to the other person and connect is to speak at the same rate they're speaking in. Subconsciously, it goes to them as, ooh, they're just like me. I kind of like this guy. It's a great way to mirror subtly and to connect.
That's
and then the other... Go ahead.
No.
Yeah, is that fascinating?
Please. Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah. Go ahead. I want to hear more.
Okay. And then the other one, and this is another trick that I tell everybody, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Listen to verbiage. So one of the things when people talk to me, especially by phone, they will pick up on a slight southern drawl. And I'm originally from Houston. Okay. I don't know if I've still got it, but apparently sometimes people say it's that southern drawl.
You sound perfectly normal to me.
On it. Thank you. You do too. Okay. Now, one of the things that I say is y'all. Mm-hmm. And so people pick up on that y'all. And if they will use y'all subtly, Kevin, I'm like, oh my gosh, are you from the South? Well, you said y'all. But what they're doing is they're connecting with me. Yeah. So if you can find something, a word that they're using that you can sincerely use with them, it connects you to them. I say that, but you got to be careful. I watched it on Bizarre Foods with Andrew Zimmern. I love that guy. He was in, I believe it was the Ozarks, and he used the word, I think they were saying acorn instead of acorn, And so he was trying to connect with them. And so he said, oh, yeah, the acorns. And this guy called him out. He's like, you don't say that. You're a city slicker. You don't say that. We say that.
That's our word.
And, oh, yeah, it was awesome. So he turns around, he looks at the camera sheepishly, and he kind of shrugged his shoulders like, whoops. And then he went back to hanging out with the locals. So it was funny. And so I caution you, know your audience. You say y'all with me, I'm on it.
Right.
You say acorns in the Ozarks, you be careful.
Well, but isn't that sort of like, well, for example, we had a little technological snafu, and my tendency, and if anyone who listens to this show knows that I don't go back and edit out the mistakes, because the mistakes tell a story of their own, right? So,
okay.
I had a direction for that, but I mean, I think, isn't it one of those things where if you get called out on that, trying to do that, it's better to own up to it, right? I mean, that increases
Absolutely.
your sincerity, right?
Yes, it humanizes you. And so I'll tell you, when I'm up doing a presentation, and one time, let's just say I had a very public misstep, and somebody in the audience called me out on it, and I turned around and I busted out laughing, and I said, yeah, great, and I'm supposed to be the expert. And we all laughed it off. Well, afterwards, I had a couple people come up and say, you stopped being the scary body language lady and became human.
Yeah.
Because you owned it on stage.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it endears you to other people.
Yeah. That's been my experience. And so, okay, and this is really all about you, okay, but I have so many stories.
Okay.
But here's one.
Go for it. Okay.
I want your opinion on it, because I have my philosophy on this. But my wife pointed out that, because I am not an idiot and I'm not a bumpkin, but whenever we're in certain situations, and one of those is the airport, and it's usually sort of a high stress, everybody's on edge, it's busy, it's crowded. She says that I kind of lapse into this mode where it's like I'm just completely, like I'm a bumbling, inept country boy, and I'm just brand new to the world. Like I just got here, big city. And my explanation for that, I had never really consciously thought about it before, but I said, in situations like that where I don't know 100% of what I need to do or what's expected, or I need help, but the other person is very stressed out, I tend to lapse into this kind of, hey, I'm just a simple country boy. I liken it to the old Saturday Night Live sketch where, it's, I'm just a simple caveman, and this is me putting conscious thought to it after the fact, okay? But I mean, in my experience, that gets me a reaction of, I want to help this guy because he's clueless.
Yep.
And I don't mind. That's like the only time in my life I don't mind being thought of as an idiot. But it used to drive my wife crazy, because she's like, I know you're not an idiot, but you act like you don't know anything when you're in the airport.
Yeah, you know what? It's your survival mechanism kicking in. So you're surveying the situation, and let's face it, I don't mean this in a bad way. We are all out for ourselves, on a certain level. And so you know what you need. So you understand, if people are feeding off my body language, I'm going to get what I want. So you assume this. I'm going to go back and say, you probably started doing this at a very young age and figured out, ooh, if I do that, I get a cookie. Or, ooh, if I do that, I get to cut in line. So you figured it out, and you just developed it over time, and it serves you well. When it doesn't serve you, you'll probably get rid of it.
Yeah.
But if it's accomplishing what you need, it's your subconscious understanding how to manipulate the situation in your favor.
Yeah.
That's normal.
Yeah.
It's a survival thing.
That's very cool, though. I mean, I wanted to know more about that, because I end up kind of making friends with this person, Where 2 seconds ago they were hacked off at everybody that they ever knew. Now they want to help me, and they give me a better seat or something, so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I'll tell you, from a woman's standpoint, when we get to certain, or at least me, I know a lot of people do it, when we get into certain situations, we assume a different body language. So if I'm walking through a garage, I literally have in my head, don't come near me, or I will cut you. And you give off that vibe, and guess what? People don't bother me in the garage, But so you adjust to your surroundings. It's about survival. And then I'm with you, Kevin. Sometimes I am sticky sweet, and I'm just really quiet and I'm watching everything because I understand if I sit there and I'm quiet and I ask a question, I'm going to get the attention rather than, constantly talking. Same thing you're doing. It's a survival thing, and it works very well.
Very cool. Yeah, I know that trick of, you want to. Now I'm going to be more conscious of this. I'm going to experiment and see what I can figure out, because that idea of, whenever we've been in situations where we were surrounded by, it could be hostile territory, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've noticed that I can sort of affect this, I don't know, this internal viewpoint, attitude, worldview or whatever for a few minutes that keeps people from accosting me on the street. And when I don't do it, people ask for money, or they won't get out of the way or whatever. But it's just a change. It's really just a change in perspective. I don't change anything else. I'm not holding my fists up. I'm not yelling. I'm not doing anything. But then it's like the waters part.
Right. Exactly. It's mindset. And remember, what you think about comes about. So it's fake it till you become it. Yeah. That's what you're doing. Yeah. It's the same thing. And so when I work with people on, especially like managers, if you want to, if you want to come across a certain way, think about someone who embodies that and imagine how would they behave. And then you'll start taking on their persona. So I always laugh and I tell people, when I've got to get up on stage, I hear the James Bond theme in my head. And I'm always like, he's always so calm and poised, and it calms me down. So I'm like, what would he do? And then I throw in a dash of over because he's a cold-blooded killer. So
very interesting. It's like having like icons you can activate on your mental desktop that turn on various parts of your personality.
Exactly. Cool. And that's what we're doing.
That is very cool. And what I want to know is how to make that more, direct and more under my control. And you were okay. So you brought something up, and it's something I wanted to talk to you about, because it's that there is you brought up the idea that how you're representing the world inside is going to affect your exterior world. Like, it's going to change your reality in a sense. And that has that sort of new age feel to it sometimes. And I have this conversation with clients and with other people about the idea of affirmations, because it's gotten kind of a bad rep.
Yeah, of course.
So how do you, what's the sort of scientific backing on that? Because I believe it. I know that it works. I know this stuff works, but it sounds like, wishing. It sounds like magic to some people.
Actually, no, this is all proven scientifically. This is coming from, it's the oldest part of the brain. It's our survival mechanism, and I'm forgetting the name of it. But they have done study after study after study that prove that this is real. There is science behind it. It goes back to your subconscious in the brain. It's your survival mechanism. Yeah. So Ann Cuddy, perfect example. She has studied all of those things. Dr. Ekman, same thing. So if you just want to pull up study after study that confirms body language and what I'm saying, you'll find it. Hundreds and hundreds of studies on this. And so that's how come they know that this is scientifically based, because it has to do with our survival mechanisms. And it's how we lived way back when, even before we had our vocal cords. They're still using it in the animal kingdom. We're part of the animal kingdom. And so this is true. This is scientifically backed up. These studies just show that, fake it till you become it. And people become this over time. And again, it has to do with survival mechanisms. You adapt in the airport, I adapt in a garage.
Yeah. That's very interesting. And when you said that, it brought up that idea of, if you were to encounter a bear in the woods, you should make yourself as big as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's really sort of like a interspecies communication kind of thing at that point. So
yeah. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, it's what we do. And we can progress as much as we want to, but there's a part of us that's always going to have that survival mechanism in us. And one of the things that we mirror and connect is because we understand as a pack, we're stronger than just by ourselves. So that's where the mirroring stuff comes in, and you're instantly within 7 seconds of laying eyes on somebody. They don't have to say a word. You've already sized them up in your head on, are they a threat to me, or are they neutral, possibly an ally? Yeah. That happens subconsciously within 7 seconds.
Yeah. And where I come in on this and where I want to master this is I want to be able to do that not just quicker but better. Like I want to be able to size someone up to the point where I know whether I can trust them. Like I'll give you a great example. I work out of a lot of different Starbucks and coffee shops. It's just part of the gig, okay? And there is that moment when you've got a great table, you've got your laptop, you've got all your stuff out, and it happens. You have to go to the bathroom. And
of course,
you don't know anyone around you, but you look up and there's the guy sitting kind of across from you, and your eyes meet and you kind of give the nod, Like I want to be able to do that and trust that when I come back, my laptop's still there.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. Here's what I tell people. From when you're trying to figure out who you can trust, look for eye contact. Look for that open body language. If you get around someone or you look at somebody and you're just getting bad jujus and you don't know why, you need to go with that. Yeah. So my first thing is I always look in, especially when I'm out in a new area, maybe I'm at Starbucks or whatever, but I'm going to look around and I'm going to go with my gut on who's friendly and who can I trust. And then, especially if somebody gives me eye contact, and it's good eye contact, it's not Hannibal Lecter eye contact, I'm going to ask them, hey, can you watch my stuff for a second?
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, people are going to, I believe in my heart, the majority of people are honest and have your best intent present. You just got to weed out the little ones who don't, if you want to steal your laptop.
Yeah. And my gut says that most of the time, those are not the people who are hanging out at a Starbucks doing work.
Right.
They may be at a Starbucks. They may come in for a cup of coffee, but they're probably the ones who are more lingering. Just hanging out, maybe reading a magazine, or I don't know. I don't want to give magazine readers a bad rep, but
no. Well, remember, the police always talk about majority of crimes are crimes of opportunity, like you left your door unlocked.
Yeah.
So, so people coming into Starbucks, if they're settled and have their stuff spread out, they're probably not going to take your stuff. They're there for the long haul. Or you see me sipping coffee just staring out a window, probably not going to steal your stuff.
Right. Yeah. You're being reflective. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So how about, now I don't know if this is part of what you deal with, so feel free to shift this to some other area of conversation, but what about relationships, like marriages and personal relationships? I mean, is there a way you can use this? What are some ways you can use this to help strengthen those relationships?
Okay. You can't. I obviously work with professionals. That's what I prefer to do.
Yeah. Which is fine. You don't have to. You don't have to stretch if it's outside your purview.
I can tell you some of the things that work professionally work personally as well.
Okay.
A couple of things that I would suggest is make sure that you're giving good eye contact to your spouse. And when I mean eye contact, I'm not talking about drive-by. I'm talking about eye contact, because we need to trust you. Even if you are in a relationship with that person, they still need to trust you, and they get that through your eyes. Also use touch. We don't get to use touch very often in the public arena anymore because it's kind of become a little bit taboo.
Yeah.
But incorporate touch. Another thing, I wrote an article on using body language to resolve conflict resolution. And one of the things I talk about is go sit next to that person. And because when you put a table in between you and the other person, it comes across as adversarial. But if you sit next to them, they get to feel you as a human being, but you also come across as being a team. And I'm not trying to up you. I want to work with you on this.
Yeah.
So there are things you can do that will help and strengthen your relationships. And then the other thing I would say is practice active listening. Be mindful that, when you're talking to somebody and they're just not speaking as fast, slow down your rate of speech and listen to the emotion behind the words. because they're going to tell you whether Kevin, they can sit there and lie through their teeth, but listen to the emotion behind their words, and that's going to tell you how they feel about the situation. And on a personal level, that's really what you should be listening to, because anybody can tell you anything you want to hear. Listen to the voice.
Okay. All right. Active listening is something that I think I got to work on. So,
we could all do that.
You know what's ironic is if I were to get my wife on the other end of a call like this, and I'm just sort of doing it podcast style, we would be just fine. I could deal with that. It's the in person. That's when we have our conflict.
Oh yeah. I understand that.
So, okay. Whenever I'm in a situation, I don't really do job interviews anymore, but I mean, whenever I've had to do like a job interview or some sort of, interview where I'm sort of at a slight disadvantage, the other person has more clout than I do or whatever, I become hyper conscious of my own body language. Like, cause you've heard this your whole life, like, if you cross your arms, it means you're being closed off and you're not open-minded or something along those lines. Is there body language that you should look out for, or if you were in, say, a job interview situation, or you were talking to a potential client, is there body language that you should be mindful of and avoid?
Yeah, there are. So a couple of things. First of all, the crossed arms. What I tell everybody is you have to figure out whether that's just how they stand or not.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the majority of people assume that is closed off. It could be that you're just cold, but most people don't think that way. So try not to cross your arms. Move things out of the way between you and the other person. If it's a coffee cup, if it's papers, move it out of the way. What happens when we get nervous, we subconsciously want to stop the person from having direct access to us.
Yeah.
So we'll put things like a coffee cup in front of us or a book, and it's called blocking mechanism. So make sure you clear it. It makes you look more confident. Sit up straight. Get big. And the other thing that I would tell people is, especially when you're being interviewed, try not to cross your legs, because what happens is people try really hard to keep the fear off their face, so if you will, but they forget about their feet. So when you cross your legs or your feet, the feet take all the nerves and they start bouncing around and moving, and that's how I can tell how nervous somebody is I'll watch their feet.
Okay.
So keep your feet on the ground, and then if you are starting to get a little weird, as long as you're in closed-toed shoes, squeeze your toes in and out, and that will make all that nervous energy that your body's got, it's got a place to go. So if you squeeze your toes in and out, it'll dissipate some of the nerves. And then just understand you're human, and some of your nerves are going to come out. That's just the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So get big. Don't cross anything, and keep your feet on the ground.
Get big. That may end up being the title of the show.
There you go. Get big.
Okay. So get big. All right. So I love the whole idea of, the fake it till you become it, fake it till you make it. And I just wonder what the limits are of that, because, clearly I can't fake being an NBA basketball player and go out and, leap and dunk. But what are some limits to this kind of thing? And or are there really? I mean, are they really limits, or is it just you got to keep faking it but adding action to it or something along those lines?
I'm going to say there are obviously limits to it. I mean, you and I both can't be NBA basketball players. We're not going to be the next Tom Brady. That's just, it ain't going to happen. So I would say let's be realistic with your dreams and what you want to accomplish. Mm-hmm. And then what I tell people is, if you have been trying to, so I'm very big, especially when I'm working with job seekers, because I will go give classes to folks on that, and I say get big. If they are continuing to struggle and they just keep having their shoulders, hunched over, or there's just sadness in their voice, one of the things that people don't like to hear, but they have to hear, is you're going to need to look at what's going on inside, and maybe that means talking to a professional, talking to your pastor or something, but you're going to have to dig deep, because you're not going to be able to change your body language if you've got something deep-seated in there that you need to address.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I say that just because I've seen it sometimes in people, but in general, you can fake it until you become it, at least for a little while.
Yeah.
And I say at least for a little while. It gets you through the interview. It gets you through the airport. You know, you fake it till you become it, at least for a little while. But if you are you know, in a good place and you know this is what I need to be doing, you can assume that those body language cues and become it. Now, I say that because and actually I was working on my body language with my business coach, and he and I were talking about, you know, it's the way you walk in a room. So he and I were testing how I was walking into the room and the reaction I was getting with people. And so now it's subconscious in that when I walk into a room, I have this certain body language approach where people just react to me in a very positive way.
Yeah.
I couldn't have done that before until I sat with my business coach, and he and I got really deep on why do you not believe this about yourself?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there are limits, but at the same time, there aren't. If you really will embrace this and you're open to change and understand what's happening, and this stuff doesn't happen overnight, you'll be just fine. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, it leads to a follow-up. I mean, can you use these techniques to affect a permanent change in behavior?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely you can. That's the whole premise behind fake it till you become it.
Yeah, okay.
So one of the things that that I've done is I tell everyone to get big. And so some of the things I do is when I go sit down at a conference table, I am automatically subconscious, okay, what does a successful person do, or what does a confident person do? So one of the things that I do is I make sure my chair is up even with everybody else, because it says I'm confident. I always have my shoulders back. I always give eye contact, unless it's a conscious decision on my part not to give eye contact.
Yeah.
So I've done it so much, it just happens. And that's what I'm saying. Once the subconscious understands that this is what I want to present, this is who I really am, it will take over. It just happens, but it takes practice.
Yeah, like anything else.
Right.
It's the same as what I tell people for improving in writing. I mean, it sounds so similar. And there's even some similar concepts there, because I tell people to use writing to shape who they are. So, yeah. So I love that. I love everything about this conversation right now. So,
Yeah.
now, as you know, we're getting close to wrapping up, but I wanted to mention that you have a podcast, which I'm actually a listener. It's the Body Language for Sales Success podcast, right?
Yes. Thank you. Yes, I do.
Okay. And I like it because it's very digestible. It's very, small chunks. It's not like an hour long like this show, but it's, 15 minutes or so, really short. If that, I don't even think it's that, right? It's just a few minutes.
No, I got on my soapbox one time and it was 6 minutes. So.
Okay, there you go. You have a very small soapbox. So for those listening, go check that out. Now, you also have a DVD. It's available on DVD, but it's also available on streaming. Is that on Amazon?
Correct.
And that's called...
Correct. Sorry.
Oh, no. Go ahead. I was just going to name it.
It's called 7 Seconds to Gold, Body Language for Success. And what we did is we filmed me over a 2-part presentation where I talk about, as a bonus, I talk about your body language and how to come across as honest and sincere. Mm-hmm. And then I move into how to read other people's body language. And I have a technique called the 4-part body observation, where you break up the body and you just start looking and listening. And then I wrap up the presentation with red flags. Okay. So what to look for and what to listen for, and how to go back and ask the right questions. So that's out there, and it's not on Amazon. Did you know Amazon doesn't sell streaming videos? They have to have something physical in their hand.
Oh, no, I did not know that. I thought they had a streaming service. So
not for sellers like me. We've gone round and round already on that. So they will sell my DVDs, but right now I'm selling the DVDs on my website, and then we also are selling the streaming capabilities on my website. So you just go and order it, and then we get you access.
That might be better anyway. You own it. I mean, it's
exactly.
It's just that's a bigger channel of distribution. But you and I can have a whole conversation about that at some point if you want.
Right.
It's the same thing I tell people about books. I mean, Amazon is they basically have made it possible to make a living as an indie author, but they're not the only game in town, so there are advantages. Okay, so and people can check you out online at underlyingcommunications.com, which
Yes,
I will
correct.
put links to all of that in the show notes, and people can check out the DVD. I may have to go check out this DVD, at least get the streaming thing. I'd like to learn. This is a fascinating topic to me. Did you ever read the book, and I'll put this in the show notes as well, there's a book called You Can Read Anyone by David Lieberman?
I might have. I have read a million books.
Okay.
And I've read some great books. But if you want to email that, I'll go look it up.
Yeah, I will do that because that is it's on the same topic. It's about body language. It's about, and it discusses how to tell if someone's lying, for example, through the tone of their voice and through the words they use, which is something you called out, like the actual, what they actually say versus what they actually mean kind of thing. So yeah, that's a fascinating book. I'll put that in the show notes. I'll send you a link to that as well. But it talks about this same stuff. So this is a topic I've followed for a while now. I'm very fascinated by it. So, but that's it. We're gonna wrap up. Thanks so much for being on the show. This was a fascinating interview. I think I could probably go on for a while about this, but I'm gonna let you get back to your life.
Well, thank you. And Kevin, call me anytime because I can talk your ear off on this stuff. What else do you want to talk about?
Yeah, no, look for that because, I write about this stuff all the time, so you never know. This might end up being a series of blog posts or even part of a book or something at some point. So, yeah, I'll be in touch. So,
well, please share them with me, and I will get out to my followers as well, to my tribe.
You got it. All right.
Okay, cool.
Okay, everybody.
All right, thanks, Kevin.
That's been Alicia Cuello. I got it right that time.
Very good.
And
you did?
You can check her out at underlyingcommunications.com. Thanks so much, Alicia, for being on the show.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks, Kevin. Have a good day.
Okay. All right, so that was Alicia Cuello, and we had a little bit of technical difficulty in the middle of the call, but worked out okay. I've noticed that that's happening, and it's not on my end. Everything on my end is working fine. It's always something on the caller's end. Just well, there's weather and there's all kinds of problems, so you never know what's going to knock things off the rails. But the important thing is you get right back on the rails, right? So. We're a little long today, so I'm not going to do much of a wrap-up. I don't have any emails to answer this week, so we'll just go straight to some other stuff. You may have noticed I changed the I changed the ad read at the beginning of the show because I want to focus more now on building up the readership and getting more people into the books. And I'm a fiction writer. I've got maybe a dozen books out right now. We're working on some more, including some books I've written with my business partner, Nick Thacker. We wrote The Lucid, which is going to turn into, an ongoing serial for a while. I'm working on a second serial called Think Tank, which I'm hoping to release soon. And, of course, I'm editing Evernote. Evernote. I don't know why I say it. Evergreen. Man, I'm going to mess that up at just the wrong time. It's going to cause me to be really embarrassed. But I'm editing Evergreen, which was not written in Evernote, though Evernote probably helped. So, but beyond that, there's my Citadel series, which is a sci-fi series. It's kind of like, if I give it the pitch, it's Lost meets Battlestar Galactica with a little bit of Andy Weir's The Martian thrown in. The characters are very much like Weir's characters, I've noticed and I've been told. So if you like Andy Weir, if you like The Martian, which was a fantastic book you should definitely go read, you'll probably love Citadel. And now you can get the entire collected series in one book called Citadel Omnibus. If you like breaking it out, you can get the first book in the series for free if you go to kevintumlinson.com/books. You can also get the first book in my Sawyer Jackson series, which is sort of a contemporary, I'm calling it YA fantasy, but it is. It's YA fantasy, and it's kind of a fun ride. I think you'd dig it. You can get that first book for free as well. There are 2 books in that series so far. There will be more. There's more in the pike, so go tune in, enjoy. I hope you like that. And of course, I've got a handful of novellas out. In addition to the books that complete those two series, and the books that are forthcoming, I've got some novellas and short stories that are available. You can read straight from my website or on your Kindle or Nook, and these are fun. These are experimental kind of things a lot of the time. Sometimes they're a lot different than the long format fiction that I write. So if you're into short fiction, if you want something just real quick to read, go check that out. Anyway, if you want to support me, support the show, support anything else I'm doing, I would love it if you'd become a reader and go read the books. And that's it for the self-promotion. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Alicia Cuello. I'm thrilled that she was on the show. I'm going to have her back on again at some point. So take care, everybody. Take it easy out there. Rough weather right now, at least in the Houston area. And we will see you next time.
Word Slinger.